A human fought off 300 monsters to save the twins. Their mother's reward was worth every scar. Commander Stephen Rice adjusted his snug gray composite armor, its silver accents glinting in the glow of the alien ship's corridor. Standing at 6'4" with broad shoulders and a build molded by years in special forces, he looked commanding even among the tall, elegant Varillians. His dark chestnut hair, cropped short with a rebellious lock that refused to lie flat, complemented his deep brown eyes that scanned the alien vessel with veteran caution. "Commander Rice, the High Counselor will see you now," announced Terrace, his Varillian liaison, her turquoise skin softly shimmering under the ambient light. Stephen nodded, straightening his stance. Better not keep her waiting. This diplomatic visit was supposed to be simple, establish trade between Earth's Interstellar Coalition and the Varillian Trade Confederation. As Earth's military envoy, his role was to project strength and stay silent while the politicians handled the talks. The grand chamber doors slid open, revealing a vast room with panoramic viewports that showed the stars beyond. High Counselor Adara Nixon stood at the center, her presence demanding immediate attention. Her snow-white hair cascaded in full waves down to her waist, creating a vivid contrast against her soft turquoise skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner glow. Her large amethyst eyes quickly assessed Stephen with genuine curiosity. "Commander Rice," she greeted, her voice melodic yet composed. "Earth sends its warriors even when peace is the aim." Stephen inclined his head slightly in response. "Very human of you," he said. "High Counselor, we believe strength often shows itself best when not immediately on display." A subtle smile tugged at her lips. An intriguing perspective. She directed his gaze to two small figures, partially hidden by her ornate lilac gown. "My daughters, Lena and Fina." The twin girls, no more than 8 by human standards, looked at Stephen with identical amethyst eyes. Their turquoise skin was a shade lighter than their mother's. They wore matching silver dresses that complemented her elegant attire. "It's a pleasure to meet you both," Stephen said softly, kneeling to be at their eye level. The diplomatic discussions began, and Stephen quietly moved to stand near the wall, observing. The Varillian guards regarded him cautiously. "Null, roll assistant." Commander Adara shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding her. The escape pods were on Deck 7. Stephen fought his way forward to reach her, but another blast split them apart. Through the smoke and rubble, he saw the twins, crouched together and frightened, right in the path of the advancing raiders. Without hesitation, he pushed ahead, taking shots as he moved. Reaching the girls, he grabbed them, one under each arm. "Hold on tight," he ordered, searching for an escape route blocked by falling debris. The nearest option was a maintenance shaft. He kicked open the panel, shoved the twins inside, and followed, sealing the hatch just as claws scraped on the outside. "Your mother said the escape pods are on Deck 7, he told the wide-eyed twins. "Can you show me the way?" The one with a small birthmark near her left eye. Lena, he thought, nodded uncertainly. They crawled through the narrow tunnels, the sounds of battle ringing all around. Sometimes, Stephen had to break through. "Stay behind me," Stephen instructed, drawing his backup weapon, a compact but deadly energy blade that extended into a full sword with the press of a button. They encountered 3 more Dravex before reaching the escape pod bay. Stephen dispatched them efficiently, his blade slicing through their exoskeletons with practiced precision. "In here," he said, ushering the twins into the nearest pod. As the door sealed, the ship rocked with another massive explosion. "Warning, navigational systems compromised," announced the pod's AI. Emergency protocols engaged. The pod ejected violently, tumbling away from the embattled Varillian vessel. Through the viewport, Stephen watched as several other pods launched, streaking away in different directions. "Can we contact the other pods?" he asked the AI. "Negative, communications array damaged during launch." Stephen checked the navigational display. They were heading toward a nearby planet, uninhabited, according to the limited data available. "Is that planet safe?" Lena asked, her voice small. Stephen looked at the twins. Their faces pinched with fear but trying to be brave. He forced a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, I'll keep you safe until we can contact your mother." The pod shuddered as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Warning systems blared about the heat shield's breach. Steven fastened the twins into their crash harnesses and prepared himself. "Hold tight," he said as the ground rushed toward them. The crash was brutal, jerking Steven against his restraints before darkness took hold. When he woke up, a pounding headache and the metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. The inside of the escape pod was bathed in the ominous red glow of emergency lights. Systems beeped irregularly, flashing damage alerts and environmental warnings. A small voice called out, "Commander Rice." Lena and Fina curled together in their seats, eyes wide with fear but unharmed physically. "I'm fine," he told them, loosening his harness and grimacing at the sharp pain in his ribs. "Probably cracked, but he dealt with worse." "Are you both okay?" They nodded together, their white hair bouncing with the movement. Steven checked the pod's systems. Life support was working, but communications were down. The navigation display indicated they had crash-landed in a thick jungle area of the unknown planet. According to the atmospheric sensors, the air was breathable, at least for him. "Not sure about Virillian biology. Can you breathe the air here?" he asked the twins. "Yes," Fina replied. The quieter of the two finding her voice, "Our environmental requirements are similar to yours." A heavy thud against the pod's hull made them all freeze. Something large was outside, investigating the crash. Through the viewport, Steven caught a glimpse of scaled hide and gleaming teeth. "Looks like we've got company," he muttered, retrieving his energy blade and checking the charge on his pulse pistol. Only 3 shots left, not good. Another impact rocked the pod harder this time. The viewport cracked slightly. "We need to move," Steven decided. This pod won't hold if those things decide to get serious. He quickly assessed their supplies. An emergency med kit, 2 days' worth of ration bars, compatible with both human and Virillian biology thankfully, a portable water purifier and a small toolkit. He packed everything into a compact survival bag. "Listen carefully," he told the twins, keeping his voice calm and authoritative. "When I open the hatch, stay right behind me. We're going to find somewhere more defensible before nightfall." The twins nodded. Their fear evident but controlled. Steven was impressed by their composure. They couldn't be more than 8 or 9 in human years. "Ready?" He reached for the emergency release handle. "Ready?" They responded in unison. Steven swung the hatch open and leapt out. The energy blade lit up, humming with deadly intent. 3 reptilian beings, each as tall as a small horse, with jagged teeth and whip-like tails, froze for a brief moment at his sudden appearance. "Move!" he yelled to the twins, who darted out behind him. The biggest one recovered fast and charged with surprising speed. Steven sidestepped and swung his blade in a sharp arc, cutting off the creature's head. The other 2 circled warily, hissing and flaring colorful frills around their necks. "Back away slowly," Steven urged the twins. Toward those rocks, about 50 meters off, a cluster of boulders offered a possible refuge. They moved back cautiously, Steven staying between the predators and the kids. When one lunged, he met it with his blade, carving a deep gash across its snout. It reared back, retreating quickly. They reached the rocks just as more creatures emerged from the jungle, drawn by the commotion and the scent of blood. Steven helped the twins climb higher onto the rocks and took a defensive stance at the only clear approach. "Stay up there," he ordered. "Sorry, I didn't receive any text to rewrite. Could you please provide the content you'd like me to work on?" He took out one more attacker, then moved back toward the cave entrance, sword at the ready. As he neared the opening, a massive shape burst from the trees, a titan clad in armor with a gaping maw wide enough to swallow him whole. Steven pushed through the entrance just as the beast charged, crashing into the rocks with a deafening noise. It couldn't follow inside, but its eyes stayed locked on him. Its enormous claws scraped at the doorframe, too bulky to reach inside. Inside the cave, the twins had found a small alcove away from the entrance. Steven sank against the wall opposite them, finally feeling the full weight of his injuries. "You're hurt," Lena said, her voice tinged with concern. "I'll be fine," he replied, though the pain was overwhelming. He rummaged through the survival bag for the med kit. Just need to patch myself up. Let us help, Fina suggested, grabbing the kit. Mother taught us some basic healing. As the twins carefully tended to his wounds, Stephen kept his eyes on the cave's mouth, where creatures prowled and snarled. Will they go away? Lena asked, cleaning the cuts on his arm with healing gel. Finally, Stephen responded once they realized they couldn't reach us. You killed so many, Fina whispered softly. I've never seen anyone fight like that. Stephen gave a tired smile. Just doing my job, keeping you safe until help arrives. Lena asked quietly, do you think Mother made it? Stephen looked at her thoughtfully. Your mother strikes me as a survivor, he said confidently. I'm sure she's looking for you right now. Just then, a distant sound caught their attention, not the roar of predators, but the familiar hum of engines. Stephen's eyes brightened. That might be a rescue ship, he said, hope sparking inside him. Fina hesitated. Or more Drevex, she warned. Stephen nodded grimly. We'll stay here until morning. If it's rescue, they'll use scanners to find the pod. If it's Drevex. He trailed off, but clenched his grip tighter around his energy blade. Having fought off the planet's beasts, he was ready to defend against the Drevex if needed. As night fell, the twins eventually drifted off, curled together for warmth. Stephen stayed vigilant, blade at the ready, committed to keeping these children safe on his watch. Dawn broke over the alien landscape, a faint glow filtering through the cave entrance. Stephen hadn't slept all night, keeping watch. The twins had curled up together, finding some comfort and rest despite the distant roars outside. As the first light of dawn crept into the cave, Stephen caught a new sound, the unmistakable hum of repulsor engines, much closer now. He gently nudged the twins awake. Someone's landed nearby, he whispered, stay quiet until we figure out who it is. They nodded instantly, eyes wide. Stephen moved toward the cave entrance, his energy blade ready. The jungle had gone eerily silent, probably the predators retreating from the mechanical intruder. Through the small opening, he saw armored figures moving through the foliage, their sleek, iridescent armor, their Virillian design, glinting faintly. Leading them was a figure that made his breath hitch. High Counselor Adara Nixie herself, white hair neatly braided, clad in combat armor that somehow accentuated her curves rather than hiding them. Virillian Rescue Team, he announced to the twins, who immediately scrambled toward the entrance. Mother, they called out together, their voices echoing into the jungle. Adara's gaze darted toward the cave, her amethyst eyes widening with surprise. Lena, Fina, she took off running, her guards hurried to catch up. Stephen stepped aside as the twins burst out into their mother's arms. Adara sank to her knees, holding her daughters close, her usual composure slipping in the joy of reunion. My precious stars, she whispered, pressing her forehead to theirs in a gesture Stephen recognized as a traditional Virillian display of family affection. I thought I'd lost you. Lena pointed back at the cave, saying, Commander Rice kept us safe. Adara looked up, meeting Stephen's eyes for the first time since they'd been separated. An unspoken exchange flowed between them, relief, gratitude, and something deeper Stephen couldn't quite name. Commander, she said, smoothly rising, I owe you more than I can repay. Stephen stepped fully into the sunlight, aware of how he looked, dried blood crusted his armor, and the bandages the twins had wrapped around him soaked through in spots. Just doing my job, High Counselor, he replied with a slight smile, though a hot meal at a med bay wouldn't go amiss. Her eyes sharpened as she examined his wounds. You're hurt. He reassured her, nothing serious, though his body clearly disagreed. Your daughters are surprisingly skilled medics. Adara stepped closer, her movements fluid despite the armor. She reached out, her turquoise fingers gently tracing a cut on his cheek he hadn't noticed. The Nixian house don't forget debts, Commander Rice, she said softly, especially those paid in blood. Her intense gaze made his chest tighten, and up close, he noticed streaks of silver in her amethyst eyes, like stars in a strange sky. One of her guards cleared his throat. High Counselor, we need to move quickly. Our stealth won't last much longer. Adara nodded, but her eyes lingered on Stephen a moment longer. Yes, Captain Thorne, prepare to depart immediately. As they made their way through the jungle toward the Virillion shuttle, Steven saw the ground littered with predator carcasses, the result of his actions yesterday. "By the eternal stars," Captain Thorne muttered, "counting the bodies, you killed all these creatures, human." "They were trying to hunt your princesses," Steven replied, shrugging. "I felt myself get annoyed at that." Adara looked back at him, her expression unreadable. "How many?" Steven hadn't kept track. Maybe 30, 40, he lost count after the first wave. The Virillion guards exchanged surprised glances. Adara's lips twitched into a slight smile. "Impressive," she said simply. The shuttle was sleek and graceful, its hull shimmering with the same iridescent glow as Virillion's skin. Inside, Steven was taken to a medical bay, where automated systems started treating his wounds. Adara came in after making sure her daughters were settled. She'd removed her outer armor, revealing a form-fitting suit that left little to the imagination. "The attack wasn't just a random raid," she said without warming up to him, leaning against the doorframe. "It was an assassination attempt targeting my family." Steven winced as a medical drone sealed a deep cut on his shoulder. "Dravex usually don't take contracts, raiders, not killers." "Someone paid them a lot," Adara replied, her voice turning cold, "and I intend to find out who." "Political enemies?" She stepped closer, inspecting the drone's work. "As head of the Nixon Trade House and a member of the High Council, I've dealt with plenty." The medical drone finished its task and pulled back. Steven shifted his shoulder, testing the repair perfect, as expected from advanced Virillion technology. "Your daughters mentioned your husband passed away recently," he said softly. "I'm sorry for your loss." A flicker of sadness crossed her face. "Kalen died during the House Wars 2 cycles ago. He was a kind man. And a good father, judging by your daughters," her expression often revealed. "Yes, they are his legacy." She hesitated, studying Steven with increased curiosity. "Do you have children, Commander?" "No," he responded. "Military life hardly leaves space for family." "Still, you risked everything for children who aren't your own," she noted. "That says a lot about who you are." Before he could answer, the ship's intercom crackled on. "High Counselors are approaching the jump point, stealth systems at full power, but Dravex signals are still detected in the sector." Adara straightened up. "I should head back to the bridge." "Rest up, Commander, we'll talk more once we're safely out of here." As she turned to leave, Steven gently grasped her wrist. The contact gave him an unexpected jolt. Her skin was warmer than a human's, with a faint electric tingle. "High Counselor," he said softly. "If someone's targeting your family, you might need more than your usual security detail." Her gaze shifted to where his hand gripped her wrist, then met his again. "Are you offering to help, Commander Rice?" Her words carried a double meaning he caught right away. The space between them seemed to hum with unspoken possibilities. "I'm pretty good at dealing with threats to what I care about," he said with a half smile, his eyes fixed on hers. Adara's lips parted slightly. Her free hand moved to rest against his chest. Beneath the thin medical gown, he felt the warmth of her palm. "Yes," she whispered. "I've seen what you can do." Her eyes flicked over his body, settling on his recently healed wounds. "With 300 years of Virillion evolution, not a single one of my guards could have pulled off what you just did." The ship shifted subtly, breaking the moment. Adara stepped back, maintaining her composure. "We'll continue this at my estate," she said, her tone now professional again, though her eyes still flickered with. With that promise still lingering in the air, she departed, leaving Steven to wonder what form that gratitude might take and why the thought made his heart race more than the prospect of facing a jungle strewn with predators. The Nixian estate sprawled across a private moon orbiting the Virillion homeworld. Its gleaming spires and elegant domes displayed the family's wealth and clout. Steven stood on a balcony gazing over gardens teeming with bioluminescent plants, still adjusting to his new reality 3 days after being rescued. He'd been given luxurious quarters in the family wing, a privilege noticed by the household staff, who regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. The Virillions had a complicated stance towards humans. Their species had only established diplomatic relations 5 years prior, and cultural exchange was still in its infancy. "Enjoying the view, Commander?" Stephen turned to find Adara approaching, dressed in a flowing midnight blue gown that accentuated her turquoise skin. Since their arrival, she'd kept her distance, preoccupied with political affairs and safeguarding her daughter. "It's quite something," he admitted, "though I'm starting to feel like some kind of exotic creature. Your staff can't quite decide whether to feed me treats or call animal control." Adara chuckled, her laughter like chimes mingled with a soft breeze. "Humans remain a bit of a mystery here. Most Varillians have only seen your kind through media broadcasts. And what do those portray? That you're impulsive, aggressive, and dangerously unpredictable." Her eyes sparkled with amusement but also intelligence, adaptability, and fierce loyalty. "Seems about right," Stephen nodded with a grin. Adara moved closer, resting her hands on the balcony railing next to him. "The council's in an uproar over you being here. Lord Vex was especially vocal about the security risk of having a human so close to a High Counselor. I'd guess Lord Vex favors Earth's expansion into this sector. Vex supports anything that disrupts the old order," she said, like a widowed female High Counselor who won't remarry for political reasons. Stephen studied her profile, admiring the graceful curve of her jaw and the faint glow that seemed to shimmer beneath her skin in the twilight. "I'm amazed that your society permits women to hold power, yet still expects them to marry for political reasons. Evolution and tradition rarely keep pace with each other, don't they?" She said softly with a gentle smile, "We've discarded many old customs, but some still persist, particularly among the elder houses." A calm silence fell between them as they watched the twin moons rise above the horizon. "I've been looking into your heroic acts," Adara finally said. "The surveillance drones on my shuttle recorded what happened after your night on that planet. You didn't just eliminate 30 or 40 predators, Stephen." He raised an eyebrow at her using his first name. "No. You wiped out 178. Her eyes met his, sharp and filled with something that made his pulse quicken. The biological survey team identified 12 unique apex predator species among the fallen, 3 of which were previously unknown to science. Stephen flinched slightly. "I was driven," he admitted. Adara turned to fully face him. "In Varillian culture, there's a sacred tradition going back to our pre-space days. When someone saves a life, especially a child's, it forges a bond that exceeds ordinary social agreements." Null, role: assistant. "There's something else you should understand," Adara continued, her tone growing more serious. "The Thalian bond isn't merely political, it's deeply personal." The way she stressed that word sent a shiver through Stephen's spine. Personal. In ancient times, when a warrior saved a family member, it was regarded as a mark of their genetic worthiness. Her fingers traced a slow pattern on his forearm. The bond was created through a physical act, ensuring the protector's strength would be passed down through generations. Stephen swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the heat radiating from her body. "That's quite an old tradition." "It's rarely practiced fully anymore," she admitted, "but given these extraordinary circumstances and your remarkable actions," her eyes locked onto his with unmistakable longing, "I find myself drawn to the old ways." Before Stephen could respond, the door to the balcony slid open, and Captain Thorne stepped in with a stiff bow. "High Counselor, pardon the interruption, but the Council has summoned an emergency meeting regarding the Dravex incident. Your presence is required." Adara's expression immediately shifted, her political mask slipping back into place. "All right, Captain. Get my shuttle ready." As Thorne stepped back, Adara turned again to Stephen. "Think about my proposal, Commander. The ritual will take place during the Ascension Festival, in 3 days." She leaned in closer, her lips barely grazing his ear. "And remember, while politics demands the bond, my interest is strictly personal." With that alluring hint, she departed, leaving Stephen to consider a future very different from what he'd imagined when he took this diplomatic posting. Later that night, as Stephen dined with the twins in their secluded garden, he was flooded with questions about Earth and human customs. "Is it true humans only live 100 years?" Lena asked, her eyes shining with curiosity. "If we're lucky," Stephen replied, amused by their enthusiasm. "That's so short," Fina said. Virillians live for 500 years or more. Mother says you'll become our Thalian guardian someday. Lena chimed in, just straight to the point. Does that mean you'll stay with us forever? Stephen nearly choked on his drink. Your mother discussed this with you? The twins nodded together. She said you'd become part of our household through the sacred ritual. Fina explained that you'd be our protector and part of the family. Lena added that we should call you Stephen instead of Commander Rice. Stephen put down his glass, moved by their excitement. Would you like that? Having me around? They answered right away, yes. You make Mother smile, Fina said gently, like a child. She hasn't smiled like that since Father died. That simple comment made Stephen pause. He hadn't realized how much his presence might be affecting Adara beyond just the politics and attraction. The thought that he might be helping her heal from her loss added a new depth to their connection that he hadn't expected. As the twins kept asking about Earth customs and human biology, Stephen found himself warming up to the idea of the Thalian bond. Not just because of the political advantage or Adara's desire, but for the chance to belong somewhere real, to be part of a family, to find a purpose beyond the next mission. By the time he saw the twins back to their chambers, his choice was clear. The day before the Ascension Festival, Stephen found himself wandering through the estate's private archives, a vast chamber filled with holographic data crystals and ancient paper tomes. He'd requested access, claiming he wanted to learn more about Virillian culture before the bonding ceremony. But truthfully, something had been bothering him since his conversation with Captain Thorne that morning. Thorne had mentioned, in a rare hesitating tone for the usually stoic officer, I served Lord Kalen loyally for 15 years before he died. Stephen replied, Adara said he died in the House Wars, that's the official record. Thorne glanced around cautiously before adding, there are discrepancies in the medical reports. Discrepancies that High Counselor Adara has classified at the highest level. Now, Stephen was digging through historical records of the House Wars, looking for anything that might support Thorne's suspicions. The conflict had been brutal but brief, a territorial fight between 5 noble houses that escalated into all-out war before the High Council intervened. Lord Kalen Nexian personally led his house's forces, dying courageously in the final clash against House Vex, at least, that's how the official story goes. Did you find everything you needed, Commander? Stephen turned to see Merrick, Adara's chief advisor, watching him with thinly veiled suspicion. The seasoned Virillian had made his disapproval of Stephen's presence in the household quite clear. Just brushing up on some history, Stephen said casually, don't want to embarrass myself or the High Counselor tomorrow. Merrick's eyes darkened. The Thalian bond is sacred to our people, Commander. It's not a political tool for outsiders to exploit. I have nothing but respect for your traditions, Stephen assured him, keeping his tone diplomatic despite the clear hostility. See that you do. Merrick hesitated, then turned to leave. Lord Kalen was a great man, irreplaceable, some might say. The unspoken thread hung in the air. After Merrick departed, Stephen refocused on his research with renewed determination. 3 hours later, he found what he'd been searching for. A sealed medical file that his diplomatic override codes could just barely open. The contents confirmed what Thorne had suspected, Kalen Nexian hadn't fallen because of battle wounds, he'd been poisoned with a neurotoxin that simulated the effects of a Vex energy weapon. Someone had manipulated his assassination to appear as a war casualty. I wondered if you'd realize that. Stephen spun around to find Adara standing in the doorway, her face unreadable. She was dressed in a simple silver gown that shimmered as she moved toward him. You knew, he said, not as a question but as a statement. Of course I knew, she sighed, settling into a chair across from him. I ordered the investigation myself. Why hide it? Politics, she answered with a bitter curve of her lips. If I'd publicly accused House Vex of assassination instead of legitimate warfare, it would have reignited the conflict. The council had just brokered peace, millions could have died in a new war, she explained. Stephen scrutinized her face, trying to detect deception but only seeing old sorrow. You sacrificed justice for your husband to stop more bloodshed, he said. I sacrificed immediate justice, she corrected. Null, role: assistant. And yes, I realize you're physically attractive in ways I hadn't anticipated. The Thalian bonds serve multiple roles, Stephen, just as they do for Kaelin. My own desire for you is something else entirely. Are these things mutually exclusive? Stephen kept her eyes locked on his. No, but I need to understand what I'm getting into. If we complete this bond, am I simply a weapon hunting your husband's killers? You mean many things to me, she said softly, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Weapon, yes, definitely, an ally, but also something I haven't allowed myself to want since Kaelin passed. The raw honesty in her voice hit him harder than any political argument ever could. Stephen reached up, his fingers threading through her silky white hair. Then I'm in, he said simply, completely. The tension between them flared, and Adara stepped closer. Their lips met in a kiss that started gentle but quickly turned more fervent, instinctual. Her skin glowed with heat against his, that subtle electric buzz sharp and alive with every touch. Sorry, I didn't receive any text to rewrite. Could you please provide the content you'd like me to work on? Sorry, I didn't receive any text to rewrite. Could you please provide the content you'd like me to work on? His blade sliced through the attacker's weapon, then through the armor beneath it. The final assailant grabbed Lena, using her as a shield. Stand down or the child dies. Stephen froze, calculating angles and timing. The attacker's helmet concealed their face, but the voice was distinctly Varillian. House Vex sends its regards, Adara, the attacker sneered. Your human pet can't save you or your spawn. Stephen caught Lena's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. The girl remarkably understood. She went completely limp, dropping her weight suddenly. As the attacker adjusted their grip, Stephen threw his blade with perfect precision. It spun through the air and embedded itself in the narrow gap between the attacker's helmet and chestplate. As the attacker fell, Stephen rushed forward to catch Lena before she hit the ground. Are you hurt? He asked, checking her for injuries. No, she replied, her voice steady despite the trauma. I knew you'd save us. Fina ran to her mother, who embraced her fiercely while keeping her weapon trained on the doorway. We need to move, Stephen said, lifting Lena into his arms. That was just the start. As if to confirm his words, a loud explosion rattled the far end of the estate. The Ascension Festival had to be paused. The fight for House Nixon's survival had begun. This way, Adara instructed, leading them through a hidden tunnel behind an ornamental fountain. The panel slid shut behind them just as more explosions shook the estate. Stephen carried Lena while Adara guided Fina. Both children stayed surprisingly calm despite the chaos. The tunnel slope was steep, illuminated by flickering bioluminescent strips as they moved through. Where are we headed? Stephen asked, ducking under a low conduit. The ancestral bunker, Adara answered. It dates back to the pre-unification wars and is built to withstand orbital strikes. They entered a larger chamber where Captain Thorn waited with 4 guards, all showing signs of recent combat. High Counselor Thorn saluted. Things are getting worse. House of Vex forces have breached the inner perimeter, and we've identified Lord Vex himself leading the assault. Casualties? Adara asked calmly despite the chaos. 12 of our guards are confirmed dead, and many more are wounded. The household staff has been relocated to secondary shelters. Stephen gently set Lena down but kept her close. What's Vex aiming for? Assassination or takeover? Both, I think, Thorn replied grimly. With the High Counselor and her entourage gone, Vex could lay claim to the estate through ancient conquest. Not while I'm alive, Stephen simply said. Thorn looked at him with new respect. The humans' combat skills are extraordinary. I reviewed the security footage from the Garden Pavilion, 3 top Vex assassins eliminated in under 12 seconds. Adara's lips curled into a cold smile, and that was just a warm-up. She turned to Stephen. The bunker is 2 levels below. Thorn and his men will escort the twins. And us? Stephen guessed her response already. We're going to face Lord Vex properly. Her eyes gleamed with icy fury. He arrived expecting to find a defenseless widow and her children. Let's show him what happens when you threaten someone's chosen family. The twins clung to Stephen before heading out with Thorn. You'll come back, Lena asked softly, her small hand gripping his with unexpected strength. Count on it, he assured her, giving a gentle squeeze. Keep your sister safe until I return. Once the kids were out of danger, Adara led Stephen through a hidden passage to an armory. She changed out of her formal clothes into combat armor that hugged her curves and provided real protection. That's quite a look, Stephen commented as he selected his weapons, a new energy blade and a Virillion pulse rifle modified for a human grip. We're a warrior culture underneath this polished exterior, she said, checking the charge on a sleek pistol. My diplomatic robes hide more than they reveal. Stephen shot her a pointed look, causing her turquoise skin to darken slightly. Stay focused, Commander, she teased with a twinkle in her eye. First, you defeat my enemies. Then we can discover what else my robes might be hiding. Stephen grinned, the adrenaline from the fight mixing with a growing sense of desire, a powerful combination. Yes, ma'am, they navigated the passage system and stepped into the grand hall of the estate. The once pristine room had turned into a battleground, with Nixie and guards exchanging fire with Vex forces across the debris-strewn floor. There, Adara pointed toward a figure on the mezzanine, flanked by elite guards. Lord Vex, Stephen observed their opponent. Lord Vex was tall, even among Virillians. His midnight blue skin and silver haircut in a strict military style, he wore ornate battle armor that emphasized status over practicality. Stephen spotted a weakness. I count 12 guards with him. Another 20 are scattered around the hall. Stephen assessed the situation, chances. Not good, Adara responded with a predatory grin. They moved in perfect sync, using the chaos of the fight as cover. Sorry, I didn't receive any text to rewrite. Could you please provide the content you'd like me to work on? 3 guards toppled before even drawing their weapons. 2 more fired blindly, their shots flying wide as Stephen rolled and closed the distance inside their formation. His energy blade sliced through costly armor as if it were tissue paper. Adara was just as deadly. Her moves were graceful yet lethal, dismantling threats with cold efficiency. In a flash of violence, they reached the mezzanine, leaving Vex's elite guard shattered. Impossible, Vex gasped, retreating as Stephen advanced toward him. No single warrior could do that. I've killed nearly 200 predators to protect her children, Stephen said with calm resolve. What made you think I'd do any less? Vex drew his ceremonial sword, a real metal blade, Stephen noticed with surprise. Our duel will go down in house history for generations, Vex declared. The day Lord Vex killed a human savage. Stephen powered down his energy blade and dropped it. Then let's make it fair. Sorry, I didn't receive any text to rewrite. Could you please provide the content you'd like me to work on? A wise elder Virillion woman in elaborate robes stood at the entrance of the Grand Hall, flanked by council guards. Lord Vex, you are accused of murder, conspiracy, and violating the House War Accords. As the guards moved to arrest Vex, Adara stepped towards Stephen, her eyes filled with emotions too complex to put into words. You could have ended him, she whispered softly. Why didn't you? Because I'm more than just a weapon, Stephen replied, sheathing his knife, and you're not just a widow seeking revenge either. We're better than that, together. The fire of battle still burning within them sparked anew as Adara pulled him into a fierce kiss, disregarding the watching council members and guards. When they finally parted, both panting for breath, she pressed her forehead to his in the Virillion gesture of deep closeness. The Thalian bond, she murmured, doesn't need a formality or celebration, it's already between us. Then let's make it official, Stephen said softly, his hand resting on her waist. After they checked on the twins, who were safe in the bunker, the reunion was overwhelmed with tears of happiness and relief. As the family embraced, Stephen felt a shift inside, a sense of belonging he'd never experienced before. Later that night, in Adara's chamber, miraculously untouched by the chaos, they sealed their bond in the most ancient, inhuman way. Their different biology brought about new sensations, leaving them both breathless from discovery and longing. Adara's natural bioluminescence intensified with her passion, casting a shimmering, otherworldly glow as they gently explored each other with a mix of tenderness and hunger. "I never thought," she whispered afterward, tracing the scars on his chest, badges of honor from her predator planet. "Humans are so intense," Steven said with a smile, pulling her closer. "You haven't seen anything yet." 6 months after the confrontation at the Nixian estate, the Grand Temple of Ascension was adorned with rare, glowing flowers woven into ceremonial banners. The formal Thalian bond ceremony between High Counselor Adara Nixian and Commander Steven Rice drew dignitaries from across the galaxy, including Earth's top officials. Steven stood at the altar, clad in traditional Virillian ceremonial armor tailored for his human body. The silver and blue plates caught the temple's otherworldly light with a gentle gleam. On his chest, the Nixian crest was displayed prominently. He felt nervous, just like Ambassador Holden, who was set to represent Earth at the ceremony. "Not about the bond itself," Steven said as he fiddled with a gauntlet, "but having the entire Virillian High Council and Earth's Secretary General watching? Now that's something else." Holden chuckled. "You've really stepped up as a diplomat these past few months. The trade agreements you've helped facilitate have opened up more possibilities for humanity than years of formal negotiations." Steven nodded, though diplomacy hadn't been his main focus when he first met Adara. Their relationship had evolved from tentative allies to passionate lovers and then to true partners, exceeding both human and Virillian expectations. The ceremonial horn sounded, signaling Adara's arrival. The audience rose as she made her entrance, radiant in a gown that looked like it was woven from starlight. Her white hair shimmered with jewels that sparkled with every step she took. But it was the gentle curve of her abdomen, just barely visible beneath the flowing fabric, that drew Steven's gaze, soon to be shared with the entire galaxy. Lena and Fina led their mother down the aisle, scattering petals of rare flowers along the way. The twins had blossomed under Steven's protection. Their initial wonder at the human warrior slowly shifted into genuine affection. They began to call him father in private, a name that unexpectedly made him feel proud. As Adara moved toward the altar, a high priestess started the ancient ceremony, speaking of bonds forged in battle and sealed with blood. Steven and Adara exchanged the traditional vows, their hands linked by a silk cord embedded with bioluminescent particles that reacted to their touch, glowing brighter as the ceremony progressed. "The Thalian bond," the priestess declared, "goes beyond mere political ties. It unites not just two people, but two bloodlines, two legacies, two futures." At these words, Adara's gaze met Steven's in a meaningful look. The priestess continued, unaware of the deeper truth behind her ritual phrases. Just as they were about to say the final blessing, the temple doors suddenly burst open. Two species discovering that together, they could achieve truly extraordinary things. As little Kaelin Yan snuggled against his mother's chest, Steven reflected on the journey that brought him here, from a diplomatic mission gone sideways, to fighting alien predators in a desperate night, to becoming the consort of a high-ranking Virillian counselor and father to the galaxy's most unlikely child. Every scar had truly been worth it. Captain Thorne stormed in, his armor bearing fresh scorch marks. "High Counselor, Commander, Lord Vex has escaped custody." A gasp swept through the room. Vex had been awaiting trial in the Council's most secure facility, and escapes like this seemed impossible. He's heading toward the temple with mercenaries, Dravex raiders and hired guns from the outer systems. Stevens' hand moved instinctively to the ceremonial sword at his side, still sharp despite its ornate appearance. "Are evacuation protocols underway?" Thorne inquired. "Yes, for the civilians, but we're completely surrounded," he replied. "The temple defenses are activating, but they won't hold for long." Adara stepped forward, her expression wary despite her formal attire. "This ends today. Vex won't threaten my family again." Stevens glanced at Ambassador Holden. "Now might be the perfect time for that surprise you mentioned." Holden's stern smile flickered as he activated his comm Valkyrie squadron. "Carry out Protocol Thunderbolt," he commanded. The clear dome above revealed the sky, where suddenly a dozen sleek ships emerged from stealth, dropping out of invisibility. Earth's newest Special Forces unit, trained solely for alien combat, moved with a precision that even the Virillian military observers found remarkable. Holden explained to the stunned council members that this was humanity's wedding gift, a symbol of our dedication to the Alliance. Meanwhile, outside, human forces fought Vex mercenaries with overwhelming skill. Their combat style, unpredictable, flexible, and ruthlessly effective, cut through the hired guns like a hot knife through butter. Stephen took charge of defending the temple himself. His ceremonial armor, surprisingly practical, allowed him to take down 3 Dravex raiders who had broken through the outer doors. The Virillian nobles who had once dismissed primitive humans now watched in wonder as he demonstrated why his species was swiftly gaining a fearsome reputation across the galaxy. Despite Stephen's protests, Adara joined the fight, her pregnancy not hindering her lethal grace. Together, they pushed back the attackers until a familiar figure appeared at the temple entrance, Lord Vex himself, his once noble face now gaunt from captivity. "This is between us, Adara," he growled. "You and your human pet have wrecked everything I built." She answered softly, "You destroyed yourself. Your hatred and prejudice made you blind to the changing galaxy." Vex lifted a weapon, a relic Virillian disruptor flickering with unstable energy. "If I can't rule, then House Nixian will die with me." He fired, not at Adara or Stephen, but at the temple's central support pillar. The ancient stone groaned as cracks quickly spread across it. Stephen reacted instantly, pulling Adara and the twins out of harm's way as chunks of the ceiling started to collapse. The assembled dignitaries hurried toward the emergency exits, guided by human special forces and Virillian guards working seamlessly together. When the dust settled, Stephen emerged from the rubble, with Adara and the twins safely tucked behind him. Vex was trapped beneath fallen debris, his weapon just beyond reach. "It's over," Stephen said quietly, approaching with caution. "It will never be over," Vex snapped back. "Your abomination of a child will never be accepted, a half-breed mongrel." "His name is Kalen," Adara interjected, her hand gently resting on her belly. "He's the grandson, and he'll stand as a living symbol of what our peoples can achieve together." The announcement of Adara's pregnancy, something many thought impossible, fell silent among the onlookers. Scientists from both sides had long believed that human Virillian reproduction was biologically unfeasible. His skin was turquoise, a shade softer than his mother's, with a subtle sprinkle of dark hair reminiscent of his father's, and eyes that shifted between warm brown and violet amethyst, changing with the light. "He's perfect," Stephen whispered, entranced by the tiny being who somehow embodied the best of both worlds. "Kalen Marcus Nixian Rice," Adara softly murmured from her bed, where the twins sat close, gazing at their new brother with wonder. "A name suited for the first of his kind." "The first of many," Stephen replied gently, carefully lifting the baby into Adara's open arms. "Earth's diplomatic corps is already fielding questions from a dozen Virillian houses about human Virillian cultural exchange programs." Adara chuckled. "Is that what they're calling it now? Looks like we've started a trend." Stephen sat next to her, wrapping an arm around his family, his reward for every scar, every fight, every dangerous moment. Outside the chamber windows, the estate gardens bloomed anew, while in orbit, the combined fleet of Earth and House Nixian stood as a symbol of their unprecedented alliance. The stars seemed to shine brighter on this new beginning, not just for a family but for